Listen to this one. Right, this is Swalwell at the debate just a second ago.
It's time to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans. That candidate was then Senator Joe Biden. Joe Biden was right when he said it was time to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans 32 years ago. He's still right today. If we're going to solve the issues of automation, pass the torch. If we're going to solve the issues of climate chaos, pass the torch. If we're going to solve the issue of student loan debt, pass the torch. If we're going to end gun violence for families who are fearful of sending their kids to school, pass the torch.
Vice President, would you like to sing a torch song?
I'm still holding on to that torch. I want to make it clear to you, look, the fact of the matter is what we have to do is make sure that everybody is prepared better to go on to educate for an education. The fact is that's why I propose us focusing on schools that are in distress. That's why I think we should triple the amount of money we spend for Title I schools. That's why I think we should have universal pre-K. That's why I think every single person who graduates from high school, 65 out of 100 now, need something beyond high school. And we should provide for them to be able to get that education. That's why there should be free community college, cutting in half the cost of college. That's why we should be in a position where we do not have anyone have to pay back a student debt when they get out. They're making less than $25,000 a year. Their debt is frozen, no interest payment until they get beyond that. We can't put people in a position where they aren't able to go on and move on. And so, folks, there's a lot we can do, but we have to make continuing education available for everyone so that everyone can compete in the 21st century. We're not doing that now.
Senator says.
As the youngest guy on the stage, I feel like I probably ought to contribute to the generation.
As part of Joe's generation,
I'm all for
part of Joe's generation, let me respond. The issue, if I may say, is not generational.
Please.
The issue is
and I'll
not
let you.
generational. The issue is who has the guts to take on Wall Street, to take on the fossil fuel industry, to take on the big money interests who have unbelievable influence over the economic and political life of this country.
These issues have
Senator Harris, I'm so sorry. We will let all of you speak. Senator Harris. Senator Harris. Please, we will let you all speak. Senator Harris.
Hey guys, you know what?
We will let all of you speak. Senator Harris. Senator Harris. Please, we will let you all speak. Senator Harris.
Hey guys, you know what? America does not want to witness a food fight. They want to know how we're going to put food on their table. The issue that is at play in America today, and we've all been traveling around the country, I certainly have. I'm meeting people who are working 2 and 3 jobs. You know, this president walks around talking about and flouting his great economy, right? My great economy, my great economy. You ask him, well, how are you measuring this greatness of this economy of yours? And he talks about the stock market. Well, that's fine if you own stocks. So many families in America do not. You ask them, how are you measuring the greatness of this economy of yours? And they point to the jobless numbers and the unemployment numbers. Well, yeah, people in America are working. They're working 2 and 3 jobs. So when we talk about jobs, let's be really clear. In our America, no one should have to work more than 1 job to have a roof over their head and food on the table.
Thank you very much. Senator Harris. Please, we will let you all speak. Senator Harris.
Hey guys, you know what? America does not want to witness a food fight. They want to know how we're going to put food on their table. Part of the issue that is at play in America today, and we've all been traveling around the country, I certainly have. I'm meeting people who are working 2 and 3 jobs. You know, this president walks around talking about and flouting his great economy, right? My great economy, my great economy. You ask him, well, how are you measuring this?
Across the board, I do not praise racist. That is not true. Number one. Number two, if we want to have this campaign litigated on who supports civil rights and whether I did or not, I'm happy to do that. I was a public defender. I didn't become a prosecutor. I came out and I left a good law firm to become a public defender. When in fact my city was in flames because of the assassination of Dr. King. Number one. Number two, as the Vice President of the United States, I work with a man who, in fact, we work very hard to see to it we dealt with these issues in a major, major way. The fact is that in terms of busing, you would have been able to go to school the same exact way because it was a local decision made by your city council. That's fine. That's one of the things I argued for, that we should be breaking down these lines. But so the bottom line here is, look, everything I have done in my career, I ran because of civil rights. I continue to think we have to make fundamental changes in civil rights. And those civil rights, by the way, include not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community.
But Vice President Biden, do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America then?
No.
Do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well,
I
there
did
was
not
a
oppose.
failure of states to integrate
No,
public schools in America. I was part of the second class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a
So
local
that's
decision.
where the federal government must step
The
in. That's why
federal
we have the
government
Voting
must
Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of
I
all
have
people.
supported the ERA from the very beginning when I
Vice
ran
President
for
Biden, 30 seconds, because I want to bring other people into
I
this.
supported
Bring
the
other
ERA
people.
from the very beginning. I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years. We got to the place where we got 98 out of 98 votes in the United States Senate doing it. I've also argued very strongly that we, in fact, deal with the notion of denying people access to the ballot box. I agree that everybody, once they, in fact, they should. Anyway, my time's up. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Vice President.
All of these things have
Senator
to do with
Sanders.
fight.
Well, I share the sense of urgency. I'm a scientist, so I recognize that we're within 10 or 12 years of actually, suffering irreversible damage. But guaranteeing everybody a government job is not going to get us there. So socialism, and in that sense, is not the solution. We have to look at what really will make a difference. In Colorado, we're closing a couple of coal plants, replacing them with wind, solar, and batteries, and the monthly bills go down. We're building a network for electric vehicles. We are working with the oil and gas industry, and we've created the first methane regulations in the country. Methane is 25 times worse than CO2. And then we've got to get to that last part. I mean, the industrial, heavy industry, we haven't seen the plans yet. If you look at the real problem, CO2, the worst polluters in CO2 is China, is the United States, and then it's concrete and its exhalation. And beyond that, I think we've got to recognize that only by bringing people together, businesses, nonprofits, and we can't demonize every business. We've got to bring them together to be part of the stick, because ultimately, if we're not able to do that, we will be doomed to failure. We have no way of doing this without bringing everyone together.
Thank you. Vice President Biden, on the issue of how you do this, Democrats are arguing robustly among themselves about what's the best way to tackle climate change. But if we're honest, many Republicans, including the president, are still not sure if they believe it is even a serious problem. So, are there significant ways you can cut carbon emissions if you have to do it with no support from Congress?
The answer is yes. Number one, in our administration, we built the largest wind farm in the world, the largest solar energy facility in the world. We drove down the competitive price of both of those renewable sources. I would immediately insist that we, in fact, build 500,000 recharging stations throughout the United States of America, working with governors, mayors, and others, so that we can go to a full electric vehicle future by the year 2020, or by the year 2030. I would make sure that we invested $400 million in new science and technology to be the exporter, not only of the green economy, but economy that can create millions of jobs. But I would immediately join the Paris Climate Accord. I would up the ante in that accord, which it calls for, because we make up 15% of the problem. 85% of the world makes up the rest. And so we have to have someone who knows how to corral the rest of the world, bring them together, and get something done like we did in our administration.
Senator Sanders, I want to give you 30 seconds to follow up, and I'm going to hold you to 30.
Look, the old ways are no longer relevant. The scientists tell us we have 12 years before there is irreparable damage to this planet. This is a global issue. What the President of the United States should do is not deny the reality of climate change, but tell the rest of the world that instead of spending $1.5 trillion on weapons of destruction, let us get together for the common enemy, and that is to transform the world's energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. The future of the planet rests on us doing this.
Before we go, hang on.
Before we leave this topic,
Here's the solution. Pass the torch. Pass the torch to the generation that's going to feel the effects of
Take
climate
on
change.
the fossil
Pass the torch to the generation that's invented enough.
Thank you
before
both.
we leave this topic, here's something you all want to weigh in on. Hold on a moment.
Campaign with the Republican Party.
Hold one moment.
Just trust us on
Because
this.
somebody
We're
has
gonna.
a younger body doesn't mean you don't have old ideas.
No, we're gonna do it.
John Kennedy
Real
did
do it.
not say, I have a plan to get a man to the moon, and so we're going to do it, and I think we can all work together, and maybe we can get a man on the moon. John Kennedy said, by the end of this decade, we are going to put a man on the moon. Because John Kennedy was back in the day when politics included the people, and included imagination, and included great dreams, and included great plans. And I have had a career not making the political plans, but I have had a career harnessing the inspiration and the motivation and the excitement of people,
Thank you, Ms.
masses of
Williamson.
people. When we know that when we say we are going to turn from a dirty economy to a clean economy, we're going to have a Green New Deal, we're going to create millions of jobs, we're going to do this within the next 12 years, because I'm not interested in just winning the next election. We are
Thank you, Ms.
interested in
Williamson.
our
All
grandchildren.
right, we're going to sneak in a break in a minute, but before we go, I'm going to go down the line here, and I'm asking you, please, for 1 or 2 words only. All right, please.
Get that done in one or two
President
words.
Obama in his first year wanted to address both healthcare and climate, and he could only get one signature issue accomplished. It was obviously healthcare. He didn't get to do
No, two, the
climate change.
healthcare and the
You
economy.
may only get one shot, and your first issue that you're going to push, you get one shot, that it may be the only thing you get passed. What is that first issue for your presidency? Eric Swalwell, you're first.
For Parkland, for Orlando, for every community affected by gun violence, ending gun violence.
Senator Bennett.
Climate change and the lack of economic mobility Bernie talks about.
Senator Gillibrand.
Passing a family bill of rights that includes a national paid leave plan, universal pre-K, affordable daycare, and making sure that women and
Thank you.
families can thrive in the workplace no matter
All
who
right.
they are.
Oh, I like that.
That was pretty.
Okay,
Senator
I
Harris.
said, so passing a middle class and working families tax cut,
That's one.
DACA, guns.
Okay. I'm giving you credit for the first thing you said, the tax cut. I got you. Senator Sanders, first change.
The premise that there's only 1 or 2 issues out there. This
I'm not saying
country
there's 1 or
faces
2.
enormous crises.
Senator
We
Sanders.
need a political revolution. People have got to stand up and take on the special interests. We can transform this country.
Fine. Vice President Biden, your first issue, Mr. Vice President.
I think you're so underestimating what Barack Obama did. He's the first man to bring together the entire world, 196 nations, to commit to deal with climate change immediately. So I mean, I don't buy that. But the first thing I would do is make sure that we defeat Donald Trump.
Okay.
Period.
Mayor Buttigieg, your first priority, your first issue as president that you are going to block and tackle.
We got to fix our democracy before it's too late. Get that right. Climate, immigration, taxes, and every other issue gets done.
Mr. Yang.
I would pass a $1,000 freedom dividend for every American adult starting at age 18, which would speed us up on climate change, because if you get the boot off of people's throats, they'll focus on climate change much more clearly.
Governor Hickenlooper.
I would do a collaborative approach to climate change, and I would pronounce it well before the election to make sure we don't re-elect the worst president in American history.
And Ms. Williamson
My
with the
first
last
call
word.
is to Prime Minister of New Zealand, who said that her goal is to make New Zealand the place where it's the best place in the world for a child to grow up. And I will tell her girlfriend you were so long, because the United States of America is going to be the best place in the world for a child to grow up.
Ms.
We are going
Thank
to
you.
have...
You guys were close with the short, at least it was shorter
No, they weren't.
responses.
Not at all.